thing started right now with recording for those who are either on traveling or, oh, look at that dog in your lap, Kim. And here I thought I was going to sit in the kitten room and have cats in here with me, but they're all somewhere else right now. So, oh well, nothing wrong with that. So thank you all for your interest in what what I'm hoping that we're going to be able to do going forward. Time will tell how effective this is going to be, but I think it'll be a great thing not only for our volunteers like you, but also being able to offer regular classes, as basic classes for our adopters on an ongoing basis, which is what my goal is. My plan for today is that we're going to really kind of give you just kind of an overview of what I'm talking about, what I'm thinking about, my thoughts on how I can bring you guys up to speed, and then be able to save a little bit of time at the end to answer any questions that you may have. So I don't want to, let's see. Actually, it looks like I have, I'm not going to mute everybody. I'll let you mute yourself, but I'm not hearing any background noise. But we'll, let me go through this stuff. I've got a presentation that I'm going to share the screen with in a second. And then we'll do a bunch of questions at the end. I only have a free Zoom account. So based on our number of participants, it is going to cut us off automatically after 40 minutes. So if you were wondering how long this is going to take, we know it's not going to go any longer than 40 minutes, but I doubt it's going to go that long, but you may come up with some great questions and we'll go off into any sort of discussions that you would like. So let me do a screen share here and bring up a little presentation that I put together. Very simple. Can everybody see that? It says Teaching Foundation Skills for Dogs?
Yes.
Excellent. All right. So when I started teaching group classes, I taught a 6-week basic obedience class. And I really felt that there were things taught in that class that most dog owners didn't, or a lot of dog owners didn't care about. And after about week 4, the attendance level dropped off about 50%. So that's when I came up with the idea to completely scrap that and just go with what I consider to be the foundation skills. And I kind of came up with those thinking about if I was working with a private client who had a dog and they wanted to go through some training and, just look to me to come up with what I would teach them. And that's really what I use for teaching the foundation skills for dogs. It's the 4 things that I think every dog should know how to do. And let's hope it's going to let me. There we go. So you should now be seeing a screen that says, what is a foundation skills class?
Yes.
All right. I just wanted to make sure that you were seeing what you were supposed to be seeing. So this class generally is targeted for the novice dog owner. Now, there are frequently people in the class who have had dogs before, but generally it's thought of as targeted for the novice dog owners. Group classes are really about teaching people because as a leader of the class, what you're doing is instructing someone else how to do specific behaviors with their dogs. So you would really be teaching the people how to teach their dogs how to do the skills that we'll talk about here in just a second. I've found over time, I've had as many as 10 people in a class, and I've had fewer than that before. And I've really found 4 to 6 is the ideal number in the class. COVID kind of makes it easy to keep it at that number now because it's very easy to physical distance. We've got 4 or 6 people. But it's also from an instructor aspect, if you have more than 6 dogs in a class, it can become unruly depending on the exuberance of those 6 dogs, for example. But the foundation skills that I teach in every class are sit, down, stay, and coming when called. And in the class, basically, we um, teach the owners how to teach these to their dogs. Um, there's a reason why it's these four. One, obviously, coming when called is a life-saving bit. Every dog should be able to do coming when called. And sit down and stay, I often talk about how nice it would be if you were going to the vet office and were filling out the form there at the signing in, if your dog sat there right by you as you were doing that, and when you walked over and sat in the chair to wait to be called back, your dog laid down in front of you. So I use that quite frequently as imagine that's the scenario that you're in, because everybody in here, I think, has probably dealt with taking their animal to the vet. There are so many distractions and so many things going on in there that it can be extremely challenging for the dogs. So I try to keep the foundation skills class very simple, very focused on just these four things. But we do a tremendous amount of leash walking in the class. So if you happen to have observed my class before down in the our training yard, there's a lot of walking in circles. They walk around in the yard and such, because just sometimes 3 or 4 feet for the dogs from where they were can be like a whole new world for them, because all of a sudden there's a rock that they can smell that they've wanted to get over there and sniff that rock. So one of the big challenges for, I think, a dog owner and for a dog is being able to have the experience, the repetition to learn those 4 behaviors with all kind of distractions going on. So in leash walking can do it as well, because all of a sudden there's movement, there's other dogs moving around, there's new smells like I mentioned. There's a different location than the dog is in, so they've got a different visual view of things that they can see. And everything in a dog's world is a distraction. So part of what we do in this class is make, I want the students to understand, and as you as teachers would also want the students to understand why they're important and how they can be used in everyday situations. So everything that is taught in this class is something that every dog owner does with their dog on a daily basis, basically, whether it's in the morning when you get up or going for a walk or whatever. All of these things can come into play. So they're all very practical skills that we're teaching. And it's also 4 weeks. And once I cut it to the 4-week class, the attendance rate went up to like 96%. So it really, the things that I was hoping for turned out to be successful for it. So my vision is that you would be able to teach these skills to dogs. Obviously, you're going to have a lot of shelter dogs to practice on, that we'll talk about that in a minute. But it's not going to get at a deep enough level, and we're not going to go into the kind of education and training to where you'll be able to learn to solve behavior problems, for example. This class is really about training specific behaviors, and also why I think it can work to have volunteers be able to teach the class, because they really are the kind of behaviors that every dog should know. And once you learn how to teach it, I think it's very easy to transfer those skills. So just to give you a little idea about how animals learn, a dog learns by association. So for example, with sit, the dog learns that if they sit in that nice position and there's a food reward that comes after that, they associate a good thing. It's like, oh, well, if I sit, I'm going to get fed. And if you guys have dogs, you probably have seen this. Anytime you walk into your kitchen and open a cabinet or crinkle a bag, you probably have a 4-legged animal coming right up to you and sitting right in front of you, very, very pretty. That's the type of association learning that we do in this class. It goes back 120 years to Ivan Pavlov. That is classical conditioning, and that is absolutely Pavlov's dog right there, of that anticipation of there's food coming here. It also happens on the other side of the coin, though, if with noise, for example, or let's use the example of, well, let's use thunder as an example. Um, you may deal with a dog that has thunder phobias or just loud noises and such. That loud noise can be a very scary thing for them. Even if nothing else happens along that line, that sound in itself can be scary. So that's how animals learn. And everything we do in this class is positive reinforcement. It's all about teaching the dog to do something. We're not correcting them. We're teaching them new behaviors. People, though, on the other hand, we all learn by 3 different ways, either auditory, visual, or tactile. So we learn by, just like right now, this is a combination. Well, this class is mainly by listening, because I'm not going to be showing any videos in this, which was pretty rare, unusual for me to be doing something like this and not have any videos going on. But we use those 3 methods of teaching the people in the class how to train their dogs. So I always start out talking about a behavior, how we're going to do it, what we're going to do. I demonstrate it without an animal in front of me and talk about the reasons for it. And then usually I will borrow some dog that I will use as a demo dog that's one of the dogs in the class, and actually go through that behavior with the dog, have them sit or down or whatever it may be at that moment, and then have everybody do it with their dogs. So the attendees in the class then get all 3 different levels of learning that we as humans learn. But every dog is different and every person is different. So that's where the skills of learning how to teach a class really come into play. I honestly think I learned more about teaching a dog class by attending yoga classes than I did from anything else. And also going to an agility class with one of my dogs, because what I realized is that in a scenario like that, you can't let people have idle time or they'll lose interest and focus. So one of the things that I'll give you tips on, and you'll go as we go through things, of keeping everybody active and engaged the entire time that they're in the class. The classes are 4 weeks long, 1 hour a week, 4 sessions. The last rotation that I taught classes, though, I actually did a Tuesday and Thursday and Tuesday and Thursday. So in a 2-week period, the students were all done with a class. That was really, really effective. But that also was back during the it wasn't during the Safer at Home days, but it was early on, and we could knock it out pretty quickly. But that was a little bit of a tangent there. Sorry about that. But I am talking about when a little bit here. When do we want to get these started? Who really knows for sure? There's 2 main factors that are playing into that right now. And 10 days from today, on the 20th, is our last day here at the old shelter. Then we'll be closed for a week as we do all the finalized moving over in the new shelter. So we're going to have to get adjusted to the new building, our new flow over there. There's going to be a lot of things that we didn't expect, but we will be getting adjusted to the new building. So that's going to impact our time frame on this a little bit. Obviously, we don't know what's going to happen with COVID between now and the next several months, and if that may impact our timing of when we want to do classes. But obviously, it's going to take some time to get you guys who decide to want to go forward and do this up to speed and at a level to where you're comfortable with doing the classes. I envision that there will be 2 people per class, so you wouldn't be solo. There would be somebody else with you. It's very possible for the first mini classes, I'll be leading the classes with you observing. Well, we're going to get into that in a second. I'm starting to get off on a tangent there. I cannot imagine any public classes before December. Just thinking about what's on our schedules here in October and November, and the fact we're moving into a new building. I can't imagine that we're going to be doing any public classes before December, but it's possible. Ideally, I would love to have classes going on during the week, during the day, in the evening, and on the weekends. Obviously, that depends on availability of people to teach, number of people that are interested in the classes. Primarily, or I would say probably 70% of the people who were in my classes before had adopted from the shelter. They were shelter dogs. But there's still a lot of people who don't get their dogs from the shelter and who also went through the class. So getting you ready to teach the classes. I think the easiest way to, or a lot of the initial education I would do via Zoom. One of the reasons is because you can watch it at any point in time. Just like today, I'm recording this for those that can't attend. That would give you the ability to go back through and watch modules more and more, or watch modules over and over. Within those educations, we would be talking about learning theory. There are 4 quadrants that an animal learns. There's positive reinforcement and positive punishment, negative reinforcement and negative punishment. We'll go through that. Even though you won't discuss that in the class, it's the kind of thing I would want you to understand what's behind why we're teaching it. So there are things specifically about dogs, but there's a lot of the education that is about leading a group class, you know, how to deal with, you know, rowdy dogs in class, for example. So I see a good amount of the education just giving you the here I'm going using the word foundation, but it's giving you those base skills of some of the background stuff for dogs. But then I think the biggest learning piece would be having you guys having one of our shelter dogs and on leash, and we're in one of our new play yards, and I'm leading you guys through the class. So you would absolutely, to begin with, experience the class as a student using our shelter dogs, but it would be one to where I'll also be talking to you why I'm presenting things this way. And then I can see from there then doing the same thing, but you doing some of the components of the teaching. Some of the ideas that I've had in mind that, let's say week 1, for example, is sit, and the beginning, sit and the beginning steps of stay. Week 2, we do coming when called and a side sit. So we may decide that, or you may decide that you really like teaching coming when called and don't like to teach the other stuff. And so there's a lot of ways this may evolve going forward, depending on what your desires are as far as involved with teaching the classes. But I can see another piece of that learning and the educational piece would be you teaching volunteers and getting that practice there, both as an assistant and as the leader. So again, there would be Zoom, and there would be a lot of hands-on stuff that we would do here at the shelter in group classes. I've been thinking about doing this over the last few months, even with our dogs here, and it just now that I'm finally full-time, most of y'all, well, I've only been full-time now for about 6 weeks. I was only part-time till then, but now that I'm full-time, this is the kind of thing we're going to be able to really roll out. I think, again, it'll be great for the adopters, but it'll also be great for you guys, another thing that you're going to be able to do here at the shelter. So that's the recommended reading piece. So I want to go ahead and open it up for questions that anyone may have right now. And I don't have the chat thing set up, or it's set up here, but I'm not going to worry about that. So if you have questions, I know we're probably going to talk over each other, but go ahead and fire and we'll try to, I'll try to answer any questions you may have that I didn't touch on in that brief little overview there.
I was going to say you've covered quite amount of the questions that I had.
Thank you, Jim.
Glenn, one thing that you said that I really liked, if we do the practice sessions and we're doing them with shelter dogs, which is kind of a cool thing, which kind of got me off on a tangent of, could this be something that we actually do with shelter dogs? I know right now our dogs aren't staying much more than about 2 weeks, but we do have some longer term dogs where we may even be working on teaching some of those foundational skills to them with us, so that when they're adopted, they kind of know some of these already. It might increase their likelihood of getting adopted.
Exactly. That's one of the benefits of this, is that you guys will be able to, as you come in as dog companions, you'll be able to work on these skills with our dogs that are here. Absolutely.
How many teachers are you looking for?
Amy, it depends on who really is interested in doing it. I'm just kind of throwing it out right there and see what sticks. I've also considered, there are some trainers in the area, or possibly even people who are going through the animal behavior college and such, that want to get their CPDT certification, which is a dog trainer certification that you've got to have 300 hours of teaching clients with their dogs. And this is one of the ways that some of those people could also be involved as well. So we may have some people involved in this that aren't current volunteers at the shelter, but they've got that training experience, so to speak, and need those hours there. So that's kind of open-ended, but I'm hoping as many people. I would like to not turn anybody away.
Okay. Now, it looked like you had a Lister reading, but it bumped back off my computer. Were there some?
Yes, I'm gonna close things with that.
Okay.
Yep. Now, Zoom just gave us a gift and said that they're going to extend longer than 40 minutes, but I don't trust them. But it's only been 25 anyway. But any other questions? And that's okay. I'm glad that I were able, like you said, Jim, covered a lot of the questions that you had there. So let's talk.
Another question, it's Meg.
Oh,
And
sure.
I'm sure we'll cover this when we're doing the classes, but when we get there, and you cover how we deal with someone who is not treating their dog the way we want a dog to be treated, or no, I'm stepping forward, but just want
Yes.
to make sure you cover that.
Absolutely. And that's a great question. Part of that is in the, I'll say the registration process, because I don't allow anybody to attend class with a retractable leash, no prong collars, no shock collars, none of that kind of stuff. Everything that we teach the dogs, and some of you have heard me say this, but everything that we do with an animal, the animal has the choice to do it or not. And if the dog is struggling with something, that usually means that there's a distraction around that's causing the hesitation. And even in class, sometimes it is giving dogs more space from another dog, for example. Or sometimes it could be, well, I'm scared, I'll do it, but if you've got cheese, sure, I'll go ahead and do that. So it also involves high value treats, for example. And we will go into those things extensively. But one of the great things too, other than the evening classes, is that with me being here full time, if, let's say we're in January now and you're here teaching a class, on Tuesday afternoon at 2 o'clock and something comes up, I'm going to be right down the hall, or I could very well be in the class. It could be that I kick classes off and then you guys take over and do the skills during the class. There's a lot. That's a good example of some of this stuff. We'll see how it all unfolds, because this is new. There's a lot of my colleagues who think I'm nuts for trying to do something like this, but they don't know you guys. It's like, I've got great volunteers. We can make this work.
I think it's a wonderful idea, and I appreciate it.
Good. And it's another thing that Liz and I have talked about too. We want to be able to give more and more really unique experiences for our volunteers. And I really do think this is a unique experience. And again, it's also, like I said in that intro email, the Dog Training Club of Tampa, Dog Training Club of St. Pete, if you've ever attended any of their classes, it's all volunteer based, and it's volunteers that teach their classes. So you don't necessarily get the, some of the explanation of the minutia that I have a tendency sometimes to describe and go into, but that's one of the advantages, I think, of being able to have those discussions, is that I always liked people that in the class had enough understanding of why we're doing what we're doing to be able to help their dogs in the future when they face something that they're not dealing with right now, such as a scared situation or something. And as you guys know, my big focus is on fear, dealing with fear dogs with fear anyway. And that's always a big piece of the class, because when the dogs come in, to our training yard that we've had up to this point and even going forward, there's going to be new smells. It's a new place. There's new sounds. All of those things are stressors for dogs and can really impact their ability to learn, just like it impacts our ability to learn. So this is easier, or you guys are picking up a lot of this because you're sitting in your homes and in that comfortable space. But if we were in a room here at the shelter, there would be a whole different aspect of how you would be receiving this and thinking about things. So same thing really applies for the dogs as well. Other questions? All right, so let's talk about some recommended reading. So I'm going to, all right, and you guys aren't over, yeah, you can't see that. Okay. I'm going to email this to you, all these links out to all of you.
Okay,
So you're
great.
not going to have to worry about copying this stuff down. And sorry, I didn't do a little better of that. But the first one I have put out on the Humane Society's webpage in the shelter services section. There is a link now for training and behavior resources. So I would encourage you to take a look at that. And since I'm not doing private training anymore, other than with our Dolly Stream dogs, also on that list is a list of recommended trainers in the area who follow the methodologies that I do, which actually I probably should have mentioned those before. I'll come back to that. Many of you I know have completed the Fear-Free Shelters program. I know Liz had sent out the email. Anyone who teaches this class, I would want you to have gone through that program. It's about 5 hours. There's no charge for it. But it also gives you, a good idea of dealing with dogs, especially in a fearful aspect. And that's Fear-Free Shelters. Out on YouTube, I've started putting a lot of videos out on the Humane Society of Tampa Bay's YouTube channel. One of them that I did recently for the adoption counselors was listen to the dogs and take the stress out of a meet and greet. Because that is, when our adoption counselors have to do a meet and greet on an adoption visit, that is by far the most stressful aspect of their job. So since I had so many videos of dog-on-dog introductions that Cameron and I have done, I put together about a 20-minute training video of dog introductions. And I talked through on all of those, what the dogs are doing. This is good, this is concerning, and it's really, that is all about body language. And that's something that if you're like me, the more you get into this stuff, you're going to want to learn more and more about body language. And that's so that's out on YouTube. There's an article or a post, I guess, it was written in 2012 on the next one. Have you heard the one about climate change and dog training? When I started training, and it was 10 years ago when I went through a 3-week program out in Colorado. I came out of that program as what is considered now a cross trainer or a balance trainer. I knew how to use shock collars. I had no hesitation to use positive punishment. I would get anything along that line to get the dog quickly. It was kind of like, let's do it quickly. This will get it there quickly. And about a year and a half after that, I read this article and immediately realized that what I thought had been doing it the right way was probably not correct. And that was really one of those shifting articles for me that made me realize that you've been wrong, Glenn. You need to focus on this way. And it's really when I became much more focused on the science behind dog training. So I'll have a link to that because I think it's really, there's some fascinating stuff in that. But then there's also another YouTube video that's out on a thing called Crash Course Psychology. It's how to train a brain. It's a big deep dive, but it'll give you an idea of how much really is behind everything that I do here at the shelter. Now it goes into a lot of things that we'll never touch on in the group classes, because it's, well, again, it's very much of a deep dive, but it's also will give you an idea of what happens in training animals. So I'll email everybody out all the links to all of these, so you can review those and look at those things. So my philosophy method for everything I do with the dogs here and in private focuses on two things: the humane hierarchy, which is kind of a structure that says, as we're dealing with a problem, here's how you address it, or kind of the steps you go through. And it's more of starting out with high value treats. And, anyway, so the humane hierarchy is one. And the other is called LIMA, the least intrusive, minimally aversive. And LIMA is probably more along the lines of what I follow, because if we've got a dog that's fearful, and there'll be dogs in class that are like this, the last thing we want to do is add to that fear, because in that association, it's kind of confirming. The dog's like, yep, I knew this was scary, and you just proved to me that it would be. And for those of you who have been with me, you know that one of the things with those really scared dogs, I am very quick to pull out liverwurst, because that is for a lot of scared dogs, it's like, I'm really concerned about this, but if you've got that, okay, I'm willing to take this step forward and let you leash me up. So that's kind of how I like to think about humane hierarchy, and the least intrusive, minimally aversive. It's all about, if there's fear, we don't want to add to that fear. And if there is not fear, then we surely don't want to do anything that'll scare the dogs. And since these are dogs who are coming into our environment 1 hour a week, it can really be overwhelming for them. It is every class. There are a couple of owners who say, boy, Fido will eat pepperonis anytime, but he has no interest in them today. But if I pull out some string cheese, all of a sudden Fido is like, okay, I'm good now. So, that's a lot of the kind of things that we're going to go through, because that's how we get dogs to realize that, I know this is tough, but this is what you're going to get for doing it. And some dogs will quickly just boom, do it for you. And other dogs, as y'all have seen, sometimes can take 3, 4, 5 days before they'll take that first step out of the run. So much of this stuff I really see, and this ties back to what you were saying, Karen, is that so much of this stuff, everything in this, you're going to be able to apply specifically to your dogs and to the dogs here at the shelter. And hopefully have a lot of fun with it. And I haven't talked to Sherry or anything about how we'll go forward. The attendees in this, those who sign up and come to the class will also be paying. So it's also money coming into the shelter as well. So that's part of my goal, because training, you can absolutely make money at training. And I see it one way that we can use it as, well, it's not going to be tuxes and tails by any means. It at least will be, money continuing to come in, to the shelter in another way that we haven't had before. So, questions? Any others? Excellent. So I will email you guys this afternoon all of the links that are on this page right here, for the ones you didn't get. I'll email them to you regardless. And I'm going to look back through our schedule on the move, and probably in about 2 weeks, I'm going to schedule our first Zoom session to start some of the overview and just kind of start doing the deep dive into it. There's a lot yet. I'm not sure how we're going to do. I haven't figured it out, but I didn't want to figure all that stuff out and then start doing this. So there's a lot of, okay, let's go with this. Let's go with that. So I know where I'm going with this stuff. I just don't necessarily know yet exactly when all of it's going to happen. So, because as we said, there's a lot of dynamics to that. But I am hoping that within probably in about 2 weeks, we'll do our first session to where we start getting into some of the little more of the details. And again, like I said, we'll start to begin with some with learning information and how dogs learn, and start kind of some of that science background, so to speak, of why we're doing it the way we are. But again, this is very much about getting our hands on dogs as well. So that's going to be the big portion of it, because the more you've got the dog in front of you as you're doing these things, the quicker, at least for me, the quicker you learn and they make sense. So is everybody excited?
Definitely, definitely.
Is anybody like, okay, maybe I'm not interested in this? And that's okay too.
No, I can't. I like the idea of using some of the shelter dogs and doing a class with them. That I think that's one of the ways we can learn very quickly.
Absolutely. Yes. Yep. And it is, I mean, not everybody, I mean, I've, in my career, have always been doing education and speaking in front of groups and everything along that line. So to me, it's, it's nothing. I mean, it's nothing I even think about, but not everybody is in that situation. So there's also that experience of being in front of a group and kind of leading a group like that. But I mean, I can still think back to 7 years ago, holy smoke, 7 years ago when I started teaching classes. I mean, I literally, for probably the first year, I had my notebook with me, and it was, I mean, I looked at my notebook constantly through class. And again, that was one of those things that I learned from the yoga instructor. It was like, she would sit there with her notebook to look what we were going to do next in the class. And it's like, nobody cares about that kind of stuff. So it's fun, but it all depends on the dogs that are in the class, but that's what makes it fun, the dogs that are in the class. One of the things that I always emphasize, that one of the very first things on the very first class, is that it's not important that the dog does that behavior during class. It's important that the owner knows how to work with the dog on that behavior once they get home. Because with the distraction, the dog may not do it there, but when they get home, the dog might immediately drop into that down, for example. So that's why I say it's more important in these classes that we're teaching. I mean, it really is. We're teaching the humans of how to teach their dog. So.
What's the youngest that the dogs can be?
Great question. 8 weeks. I'm sorry, 10 weeks. 10 weeks.
Okay.
That's a really good question. I haven't been thinking about whether we should go some puppy specific classes. Since we're going to, going forward, that may be something we may be able to do. But I've had, yes, 10 weeks. Obviously, you just, that question right there, Jenny, just spun a whole lot of thoughts in my mind that I need to write I need to make a note down and think on that. But that's another piece that just kind of popped in mind. In our new building, we're going to have areas to where puppies are going to be housed. And when there's some very specific protocols we can go through on puppies, as far as doing some handling early on to get them used to the fact that your belly's going to be touched, working with restraint very early on. And that's one of those bonus kind of things that you guys would probably be involved in learning, and be able to also do when you're here at the shelter, if we've, got some puppies in an area, to be able to do some of those things. So I just went off on a tangent, but thank you for reminding me to make a note about that.
And I have a question.
Uh-huh.
What day of the week, in regards to the Zoom classes where you teach us in a couple weeks, do you know what day of the week that's going to be and what time during the day yet? Have you thought about that?
No, but tell you what, that's a great question, Laren. When I email out the recommended reading links, I will ask that about what works good for you and what doesn't work for you. One of the advantages, again, of Zoom is that I can record these so they can be viewed after. There's just not that chance for the interaction and questions and such. But obviously, as you know, I'm much more accessible than I used to be. So I can also see doing it more than once, especially the hands-on classes. There's no way we're going to get everybody together to, go through those kind of things. And I'll probably end up doing the same thing on the Zoom classes. So I will, like I said, send this to you this afternoon. I'll include that question on there. And there are definitely going to be some things that keep popping in my mind about, ooh, this is good reading. This is this. So you may see other things over the next couple of weeks that, pop into my mind, and I'll go ahead and send out to you guys. And if you've got any questions, you know how to reach me. The easiest way is to email. But don't hesitate at all with any questions that may pop into mind. Even if it seems silly, there's no, I've gone through this before. There are no silly questions by any means. So don't hesitate to ask anything that comes to mind. Great. Well, if nobody has any other questions, I will let you guys resume your day, and I'll get ready to talk to our cat people. I know some of you guys are going to be on the cat call at 12:30. So
Cat call, no pun intended.
Thank you.
Thanks,
All right.
Glenn.
Y'all have a great rest of the day. Thanks for spending your time with us.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.